I went to my school's counselor and she kind of really opened my eyes to like, I thought I could just like do some therapy, and she was like, no, like you really need to go to residential treatment. And like, I didn't even know what that was.
Genevieve DeCanter is a student at Northeastern University. She struggled with an eating disorder for 4 years before seeking help and going to Klarman Eating Disorder Center at McLean Hospital.
And I was like so scared going into it because like I had and a lot of girls there, like they've been in and out of treatment a bunch of times and like they kind of knew how it worked, and I was just like so not prepared.
She greatly benefited from her experience and says that her time in treatment changed her life.
Treatment was the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like all of the girls I met there are just the most amazing girls I could have ever like had to spend that horrible yet amazing time with. So I mean, I'm really, really, really grateful for that experience, and like it was just so helpful being surrounded by a group of people that like know exactly how it feels, or like even if their situations are different, like you don't even have to say anything. They're just like so comforting, and like if you just don't want to talk, they understand that. Like they were all just so amazing and so welcoming, and just like everyone just fit in, and it was just like such a great environment. And the group therapy has really helped me too, because like again, that discussion of things that like you think that you're alone in, and everyone else like feels that way too. So.
DeCanter discovered Project Heal on Instagram and decided to create a chapter in Boston. The group is still very new but growing in popularity.
Primarily we have fundraising events because the main focus is to raise money for girls to go to treatment who can't afford it, and we also promote positive body image and show that full recovery from an eating disorder is possible. When I was in residential treatment, I noticed like a lot of girls were just being sent home like in the middle of, just because they reached a goal weight and they weren't like mentally there yet, and that happened to me too, and I was really angry about that like insurance companies just have such control over that and they don't even know you. So I felt really strongly about, since I didn't get like the full treatment that I would have wanted to, that, and I know a lot of other girls didn't either, so I really wanted to help out in that. I like heard in the morning, it was like a Friday morning, and they were like, oh, like your insurance has stopped covering it today, and like my parents had to drive up and pick me up, and it was just like a whole disaster, and it was just,
It's so stressful.
it's terrible. It's like really awful, and it just like reaffirms the fact that like it's so sad that girls like feel like they don't deserve treatment, because like eating disorders don't mean that you're like totally emaciated. Like you can be any weight, and it doesn't mean that once you reach a goal weight that you just like stop getting treatment. So.
Another member of Project Heal, Ashlyn Lillibridge, also struggled with eating and self-esteem and has found help and support from others.
I've always kind of had my own weight issues. I was pretty overweight in high school and first few years of college, and I've always struggled with that. I know it's not really a eating disorder, but I've always dealt with my own self-esteem issues. I've always wanted to be skinnier. The main reason why I got involved is because that's something I've always been really interested in. I have always been really interested in talking to people and helping people love their bodies, love themselves. I always just try to spread like positive things to everyone. Project Heal kind of caught my interest because they focused on specifically that stuff, and they seemed like such an important big national organization that focuses on helping women and men with self-esteem issues.
Lillibridge works a lot with Project Heal's social media campaigns, bringing attention to negative media awareness.
I've definitely seen that the media kind of portrays women in a specific and certain way. And the average size of an American woman is actually a size 14. It stinks for the women who are bigger because they feel like they aren't beautiful just because of their size, when in reality they're normal, they're natural. That's how most of the people are in this country. I think it's something that people don't talk about enough. I think that sometimes it's kind of hush-hush, like, oh, if you have like a self-esteem issue, you try to cover it up, and I think it's important to bring it out and for everyone to realize that they might have a self-esteem issue, but we all do. And I think that if we try to focus on more of the positive and how much we love ourselves, that's what's more important.
The medical community plays a huge role in researching and spreading awareness about the dangers media has on mental health. Ellen Bratton is a clinical psychologist at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston.
And my area of research is in learning disabilities and ADHD. And then my primary clinical responsibilities are in pediatric neuropsychology, which is the assessment of learning disabilities, mental health issues.
In addition, she is an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, runs the Child Psychology Internship, and directs the Learning and Assessment Program at Mass General Hospital. There, she teaches residents and postdoctoral fellows and interns about assessment and child psychology.
The other thing that I'm very interested in, though, is communicating information out to the public. That I feel like we have a lot of information here that never gets to the people who actually need it. So I have a big, real interest in making sure that the general public gets the information that we have. So I also am interested in writing books, and I've written a few books for parents in that endeavor and that goal. Oh, we know so much. The researchers here who research things like body image and depression and anxiety and learning disabilities, we know so much, and it is hard to communicate. Sometimes the better people to do the research are not always the best communicators to the people who live outside of Boston too, not even just here. So I feel like we do a good job, and I feel like it's something that psychology and medicine has taken on, this idea that knowledge is power, and that consumers really they are better patients when they have the knowledge they need to collaborate with us.
She also visits elementary, middle, and high schools around the country, lecturing on different topics pertaining to mental health, body image, and learning disabilities.
And I also feel like it's important to destigmatize some of these issues, and that's the only way to do it, is to make it more common and give more of that information. Education is key, and it's hard for them to grasp that, and I think it's a long-term process. And I think to say being more comfortable with yourself sounds so trite, but I think it's learning more about yourself. I think it's ironically in some ways becoming more self-focused, even though image is very self-focused, but self-focused in a different way. That who am I, and what are my strengths, and what are my weaknesses, and which of my strengths should I play up, and which ones do I not need to do. So I think it's educating them about what reality is, that when we see somebody in the media, when we see somebody in a magazine, it's photoshopped. It's not reality. Reality is something very different.
In her years working with children and young adults, she has noticed a substantial shift in the maturity of the media content they consume.
As a child psychologist, I just see kids accessing and watching shows and that are far more sophisticated than they should be watching. So, there are 7-year-olds who watch shows about, reality shows, and are getting their information about how to dress from people that we really don't necessarily want them to grow up to be. I'm not judging anybody on some of those shows, but I do feel like there's so much of it that it's almost impossible to protect a young child from it, and they're drawn to it. I see young girls being very drawn to very persuasive kind of, I don't know how else to say it, sort of sexy shows that make women look beautiful. And we all want to, most of us want to look good. And so it's hard to then maintain that, or to look in the mirror yourself and to know that you're not probably going to attain that.
In order to combat the effects of these messages and images, clinicians use different therapies and techniques.
So using something that we call cognitive behavioral therapy, where you kind of challenge their cognitions as well as their behaviors. So, so really analyzing, what do you think of this, and why do you think she looks that way, and why do you think that's an unreasonable way to be, and those sorts of things. So asking them what it is that they believe in, what are the things that they hold as truths, and then kind of chipping away at them. That sounds sort of mean in a way, but it really isn't. It's really just sort of giving them a dose of reality, basically. Sometimes we hold other people to be much more attractive than we hold ourselves. Do you know what I mean? We overvalue someone else and undervalue ourselves. So those are the sorts of things that we would look at in this kind of therapy, but it has been found to be very effective in treating these kind of body image issues, because a lot of it is in our heads. A lot of it is what we think is right or what we think is reality, and it's not really actually what's happening. Other kinds of therapies can be done, like sort of what we call a more psychodynamic kind of looking at, okay, so what are the family issues that have come into play here? And those may play a part too, but in terms of actually treating the disorder, it tends to be more behavioral focused. Like, here's what happened last week, here's what we're going to do this week. That tends to be something that moves people into more healthy lifestyles.
She is a strong proponent of educating children at early ages about how the images they see in the media are fabricated.
I mean, body image and looks are still somewhat taboo to talk about, especially in elementary school classes. Like, we could talk about bullying and diversity in different ways, but diversity in how somebody looks just feels so personal, I think, and they're not even comfortable talking about it themselves. So I don't find that it's one of those things that schools necessarily want to talk about before the problems happen. And then in middle school, once the problems with body image are already happening, then you've kind of got a problem that you're fixing, which I do find that schools are open to doing, but it's almost like the discussion needs to happen earlier.
She believes that's important for parents to bring these issues to the forefront and discuss them with their children.
I mean, knowledge really is power, and just thinking about these sort of things changes behaviors. So, somebody watches something about an eating disorder, like, I wonder if I did blah, blah, blah when I, was talking to my child last time, or I wonder what they think about this. Just opening discussions from parents to kids and teachers, guidance counselors with kids, sometimes can prevent the problem from happening in the first place.
There are many professionals in the Boston area who advocate for more communication about these issues.
I am one of the global advisors to the Dove Self-esteem Project, and as a company, they have an initiative really to help reduce anxiety around beauty in girls and women around the world.
Tara Kuzno is a clinical psychologist and works with health, communication, and technology. She helps girls and women with self-esteem and body image issues through behavior change and mindfulness. She is a self-described social entrepreneur and confidence coach. She uses her clinical expertise to give advice on how people can do this.
And a lot of it is helping girls and young women reduce their anxiety and accept the fact that it's okay that you don't know what it is that you don't know yet, and to feel comfortable with that. And that's really where the mindfulness and self-compassion piece comes in a lot of the work that I do.
In her work, Dr. Kuzno sees firsthand how mass media and their instantaneous dispersion of images affects young women growing up in today's modern media.
They're growing up in a culture where they're 24/7 on their phones. They feel like they have to be connected to stay in touch. But then you've also got these, these talent shows and, Facebook and Instagram. It's how many likes or followers. And so, again, these are all external reinforcers for whether you fit in or not. And so I think what's happened is, whereas in the past we were dealing with billboards and magazines, now we're dealing with media 24/7 coming at all different angles, and it just reinforces this message like, I have to be perfect, I have to fit in. It's not cool to be different, or if you're going to be different, you have to be really unique. So that's tough. I actually often go to the data and the research and the biology, and I think that one of the positive things about technology is, on the research side, is that we have so much more evidence now of what the impact of drinking is, of watching media is. We can see these sort of, effects on attention span and focus and anxiety and depression. So there's this mounting evidence, and at the same time, there's this mounting evidence that shows that when you do mindfulness and self-compassion and self-care, and you can sort of lower the bar on all of this excess stimulation, you can actually retrain the brain. What would work for one girl or woman is not necessarily going to be the same thing as somebody else. The point is that they've tried something, so maybe it's visualization, or maybe it's creating playlists, or maybe it's journaling, or maybe it's having your almost like a friend who's like an accountability partner to you that you could check in with. And so it's going to depend on the person what works, but if you have the intention, sort of the awareness and the mindfulness to notice these triggers, let's say, then you are much better to be able to respond in the moment instead of react. So that's what a lot of the work is. We didn't have apps 10 years ago. Kids weren't taking selfies 10 years ago, but they're doing it now all the time. That is a new thing. So the awareness building campaigns around body image and these unrealistic beauty ideals just need to be repeated over and over again. But I think where there's a shift is around awareness, mindfulness, self-compassion, and there's just an enormous amount of research now that's being done in schools and with individuals and in medical settings that show that when you can help people reduce the sort of nervous stimulation that they're getting from the outside world, they start to feel better about themselves, and it actually has health benefits. And I think as we start to incorporate this knowledge that has a pretty good evidence base behind it, it's going to shift some of the how these awareness campaigns are being delivered.
The clinical community is not the only one working hard to promote positive body image. In recent years, there's been a movement in the fashion industry to show realistic images of women and create designs for all body shapes. There has been discussion for years about designers using unhealthy and underweight models to showcase their designs, and designers creating garments that are designed for only thin women. Many have spearheaded a movement here in Boston to change this.
So Boston Curvy Fashion Week is the very first ever fashion week in Boston dedicated to plus size fashion, and the reason why that's so important is because in the past Boston has been very resistant to change, especially when it comes to fashion.
This June, Boston Curvy Fashion Week debuts, marking the first fashion show week that supports and encourages plus-size fashion. Emma Medeiros is the publicist for the event and has been working to create the week for years.
You know, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, Boston was named like the worst dressed city.
Yeah.
That was embarrassing, needless to say, but you know what? I'm glad that it was, because I think it really woke people up. Not only to plus size fashion, you know, being more legitimized and everything, but just fashion in general. Because until recently, designers and retailers and everything, they just thought we wanted to cover up because like we didn't like our bodies. Or it's like, oh, well, while she's losing weight, you know, just cover up, don't wear anything too form-fitting. Well, no, that's not true. Whatever weight we are, whatever size we are, we want to feel attractive. We want to feel sexy, we want to feel fashionable, and we want to give you money. That's something that designers are finally realizing. We want to give you money, please take our money. You know, just recently I posted an article on Facebook about how overall designers and retailers are losing between 12 and 14 billion dollars a year. I shared that as much as I could because I've been told so many times there's not a market for plus size fashion. Oh, well, how, like, I'm like, why aren't you carrying plus sizes? Oh, because there's not a market, nobody would buy it. I'm like, well, actually, you know, there is, and Boston Curvy Fashion Week is finally, you know, shining a spotlight on that. And I'm so glad that I'm able to be a part of it. I really am, to kind of like wake people up. You know, money talks, and if they realize that they can make so much more money by doing this, I think that will be a motivating factor. So when they see how huge of an event this is, how many people are there, how much money is in the market, I really think this is going to be an eye-opener, especially for, like I said, the old money, for lack of a better word, that's here. Because right now, they're the ones who are buying the Chanel, they're buying Louis Vuitton, they're buying whatever. You know, when they see that, they're like, oh, you know, the light bulb's going to go on a little bit. So, I mean, because Boston is such a conservative, old money area, having this, I think, is going to be extremely impactful. And if nothing else, will get people thinking.
There is still a lot of progress to be made in how women are represented in the media and in the fashion community, but there is hope for the future.
No major change is going to be overnight.
Yeah.
You know, this is a fundamental change. You can't have a fundamental, widespread change happen overnight because it won't stick. I really, truly think they can come together. That is my lifelong goal, if you would. You know, I could die a happy woman if everybody said the word fashion and meant fashion. Not plus size, not straight size.
Everyone is going to be different, and I just think we need to focus on that. Like, your body is your body, and you don't need to like define it in any way. You don't need to be skinny, you don't need to be curvy, you don't need to be called fat.
You know, it's helping women understand that they're beautiful in their own bodies, and if they take care of their bodies in the best way, whatever their size or shape is, they're going to feel beautiful and appear beautiful to other people.
I mean, I am seeing a lot of change as far as campaigns to like love your body and like every body is beautiful kind of thing. So, I mean, I think I am seeing a change, so that's good.
Yeah, things aren't going to change overnight, and I feel like there's a thoughtfulness about this, even if it's not translating into real changes in what we see.